In this video, I will show you guys how you can create this tour visual completely from scratch in Blender. This tour visual is part of my free tour visuals pack containing over 200 looping tour visuals in 4K resolution as well as 30 Blender files for you to enjoy. There is nothing to sell here, no money involved. All you have to do is go to the description, click on the very first link, and then you just have to drop me a cheeky little YouTube sub and you will get a download link to the full pack completely for free. And with that being said, let's get into this tutorial. Open up Blender, delete the light and delete the default cube, select the camera, press Alt-G to reset the location, Alt-R to reset the rotation, then go to the settings, enable the End Landscape add-on, press Shift-A, Landscape, open the bottom left menu, then mess around with the settings here until you like it, just don't touch these two settings here. Select the landscape, go to the modifier properties, add modifier array, maybe turn the count up a little bit, select the camera, press RX 90, then RZ minus 90, then GX to move it backwards, GZ to move it upwards, then click on this little camera icon right here to go into camera view, then while you are in camera view you can still hit GZ to move it upwards or RY to rotate it downwards. Make this bottom window a bit bigger, open up a shader editor, click new, hit Shift A, search for wireframe, connect the factor to the base color and also to the emission strength, make the emission color white. Boom, look at that, looks pretty cool, right? Well, we can make that look way cooler by also connecting the factor to the alpha input, then pressing N on the keyboard, going to options, blend mode to alpha blend, shutter mode to none, and then we can also disconnect the emission strength from the factor again. So yeah, anyways, this is, kind of really doesn't make any difference. Change the shader editor from object to world, turn down the background strength to 0, change it back to object, hit Shift A, gradient texture, hit Shift A for a color ramp, and with this we can, start tweaking, start messing around. You can hit Shift A and add a math node, set it to multiply to sort of set the base value for the wireframe width. Go to the settings again and enable the node wrangler add-on, select the gradient texture, hit Ctrl T, that gives us the mapping and texture coordinate node. Hit Shift A, get any empty into your scene. On the texture coordinate node, choose the empty as the object and also plug the object into the vector for the mapping node. And then you can move, rotate and scale the empty around to control the fall off and the position and the orientation of the gradient. And so once we're happy now with the position and the fall off of the gradient texture, we want it to always move together with the camera. And so we can tell Blender to do that by selecting the empty, then shift selecting the camera, then hitting Ctrl P, object, and then we can set some keyframes for the camera. So go to frame 1 in the timeline, press I to insert a keyframe, choose location, move forward a few frames, let's say to frame 40, GX4, left click, I, location, then go to frame 80, GX4, left click, I, location, press A to select all keyframes, press T to select the interpolation type, and choose linear. And you might realize that you haven't put enough iterations on the array modifier, so just open up the array modifier again and, Now go to frame 1, press spacebar to let your animation play. Yeah, that might be a little bit too fast, so I'm just taking the second keyframe, moving it to 150, and then the third I'm moving to 300, so it's 150, 300 instead of 40, 80. We now want to have a perfectly looping animation. So first of all, we're going to be rendering this from 150 to 299. Why not from 150 to 300? Because the frame 150 and 300 look exactly alike, and so with that there's going to be this little hiccup because the frame's doubled. And then also, why are we not just rendering it from frame 1 to 149 and instead going from 150 to 299? Because we want to render this with motion blur, and if you render from the first frame to 149, then with regards to the position it's going to loop perfectly, but the motion blur on the first frame is missing. On the second frame it's there, but on the first frame it's missing. So what we do instead is we do 2 cycles of the looping motion and then render it from the start of the second cycle towards the end of the second cycle minus 1 frame. And that's how you get a perfectly looping tour visual. Alright, that's all well and good, but let's do some more shader magic. I'm going to take this group of nodes, move it aside, then press Shift D to duplicate it, move it downwards, left click. And for this I'm going to take the normal information from our landscape. I'm also going to change the gradient texture to linear, and then I'm going to move the handles of the color ramp around until I get this really cool looking result. And so that's coming from the normal information of the faces of our landscape. If you don't know what normal vectors are, you can select the object, go to edit mode by pressing tab on the keyboard, then come over here, normals, and then you can click on this little icon. And so now we're using the normal vectors to get a really cool shading result. And so now I want to mix the information from the top node group and the bottom node group together. In order to do that, I'm going to hit Shift A and search for a mix RGB node. In the newer Blender versions, that's just called a mix node. And then if you select the mode color, you get the exact same node as we're dealing with right now. I'm gonna set the mode to multiply, get the factor to something close to 1 but not quite 1. And yeah, go to the output properties, set the resolution to 3840 by 2160, which is 4K. Change the file format to FFmpeg video. Open the encoding tab, change the container to MPEG-4. Then also change the output quality to perceptually lossless. Click on this little folder icon here on the output to select an output path. give it a name that you like, click accept. We can go to the render properties, enable motion blur here. You should always up the steps when you want to have proper motion blur. You can also try enabling bloom. I wouldn't recommend overdoing it though. Sometimes turning down the radius really helps to maintain, generally speaking, the pure black values in the background. Then go render animation. And with that being said, thanks for watching and see you in the next video. Bye bye.